The year was 2347, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Concord for exactly 200 years, when the first alien ships appeared in Earth's solar system back in 2147. The galaxy expected to find another violent species ready to be conquered or contained. But what they found confused them deeply. Humans did not come with weapons pointed at the stars. Instead, they came with open hands and warm smiles. They came with medicine and food and offers of friendship. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the Galactic Assembly Hall, surrounded by representatives from 100 different species. Some had scales that shimmered like diamonds. Others had tentacles that moved like silk in water. And a few were made of living crystal that hummed with ancient energy. She was small compared to most of them, fragile-looking with her soft brown skin and dark hair pulled back in a simple knot. The Kreth diplomat towered over her, his forearms crossed in contempt, his yellow eyes narrowing as he looked down at the human woman. "Your species continues to disappoint us," the Kreth said, his voice rumbling like thunder in the great hall. "When will you learn that kindness is weakness in this galaxy?" Elena simply smiled, that same patient smile she had worn for 30 years of diplomatic service. "We prefer to think of it as strength," she replied calmly. The hall erupted in laughter, dozens of alien voices making sounds of amusement at the tiny human's words. She stood there and let them laugh, her expression never changing. This was how it had been for 2 centuries when humanity first joined the Concord. They asked for nothing but friendship and trade. They did not demand territory or tribute. They did not threaten or posture. Instead, they offered help. Human doctors traveled to plague-stricken worlds and worked until they collapsed from exhaustion. Human engineers rebuilt cities destroyed by natural disasters. Human ships carried food to starving colonies that other species had abandoned. The galaxy watched in confusion. The Velthari hegemony tested humanity first. They destroyed a small human outpost on the frontier, killing 300 colonists, and they waited for the human response with weapons-ready Earth-sent diplomats, not warships. Ambassador Vasquez's predecessor had stood before the Velthari High Command and asked only for an apology and compensation for the families of the dead. The Velthari laughed in his face and gave nothing. Humanity accepted this and moved on. 10 years later, the Kreth Dominion did something far worse. They bombarded a human colony world called New Dawn. 50,000 men and women and children burned in nuclear fire. The Kreth broadcast the destruction across the galactic network as a warning to other, lesser species. The galaxy held its breath and waited for human retaliation. It never came. Earth government issued a formal protest. They demanded reparations and an official apology. The Kreth refused. Humanity accepted this too. Doormats, the other species whispered. The humans are the galaxy's doormats. Elena had heard this word so many times that it no longer bothered her. She heard it in diplomatic meetings. She heard it in trade negotiations. She heard it whispered behind her back at every assembly gathering. She never argued. She never defended. She simply smiled and continued her work. What the galaxy did not see was what happened in the shadows, deep beneath Earth's surface, in a facility that officially did not exist. Admiral Chen Wei reviewed files that had been classified for 2 centuries. The folder on his desk was marked with a single word: Prometheus. He was an old man now, his hair white and his face lined with age. But his eyes were sharp and his mind was sharper. He had spent his entire career preparing for a day he hoped would never come. Report, he said quietly. His aide, a young woman named Lieutenant Park, pulled up holographic displays showing data from across the galaxy. Our intelligence network remains undetected, she said. We have assets in every major government, every military command structure, every economic center. The mapping project is 98% complete. Chen Wei nodded slowly. For 200 years, while humanity smiled and helped and accepted insults, they had been watching and learning and preparing. Every act of kindness was also an opportunity to gather information. Every humanitarian mission placed human observers in strategic locations. Every trade agreement gave human analysts access to economic data. The galaxy saw sheep. They did not see the wolves hiding beneath the wool. And the fleet. Chen Wei asked Lieutenant Park, hesitated for just a moment before answering. 12,000 capital ships, 40,000 support vessels, 2 million trained marines, all hidden in deep space facilities that appear on no charts. Chen Wei closed the Prometheus folder and leaned back in his chair. 200 years, he said softly. 200 years of patience, of restraint, of watching our people die and doing nothing. Sir, Park said carefully, do you think we will ever need to use it? The old admiral was quiet for a long moment. I pray every day that we never do. He finally said, humanity chose this path because we know what we are capable of. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we reached the stars. Wars and hatred and cruelty that would make even the Kreth look merciful. He stood and walked to a window that showed a simulated view of Earth's surface. Blue oceans and green continents, cities that sparkled with light. We decided to be better, he continued. We decided that when we met other species, we would show them the best of what we could be, not the worst. The mask of mercy is not a deception. It is an aspiration. It is who we want to be. But if someone forces our hand, Park asked Chen Wei turned to look at her, and for just a moment she saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Then they will learn why we fight so hard to be good. He said, they will learn exactly what humans are capable of when we stop holding back. Far above them, in the Galactic Assembly Hall, Ambassador Vasquez was finishing another day of diplomatic work. Another day of smiles and patience and quiet dignity in the face of contempt, a Concord diplomat. A crystalline being from the ancient Solari race approached her as she prepared to leave. Your species confuses me, the Solari said, its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You have the numbers and the intelligence to be a great power. Yet you choose to be servants. Why? Elena looked up at the beautiful alien creature, and her smile softened into something more genuine. We simply choose not to show what we truly are, she said quietly. Be grateful that we make that choice. The Solari tilted its crystalline head in confusion as the small human woman walked away in the shadows of the galaxy. Humanity continued to smile and help and wait. They had been waiting for 200 years. They could wait a little longer. The Velthari were an ancient predator species. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years through strength and cruelty. Their empire had swallowed a dozen civilizations. Their warriors were feared across 100 star systems. High Lord Carvax sat upon his throne of black metal and bone, his scaled body covered in the scars of countless battles. His red eyes burned with a hunger that had never been satisfied. Tell me about the humans, he commanded his intelligence chief, a smaller Velthari named Thesok. Bowed low before speaking, they are weak, High Lord. In 2 centuries, they have never once responded to aggression with force. They talk and negotiate and accept whatever scraps they are given. They are prey animals pretending to be civilized. Carvax smiled, revealing rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. Then they will be easy to break, he said. Begin the campaign. What followed was a nightmare for humanity's frontier colonies. Velthari raiders attacked human merchant ships and took their crews as slaves. They broadcast images of human captives being tortured and killed for entertainment. They burned farming colonies and laughed as families fled into the cold vacuum of space. Earth's response was exactly what the galaxy expected. Ambassador Vasquez stood before the Galactic Assembly and demanded action. She called for sanctions against the Velthari hegemony. She pleaded for the Concord to intervene. The Assembly debated for weeks and did nothing. The Velthari grew bolder. They attacked larger colonies. They took more slaves. They sent messages to Earth promising that every human would eventually kneel before the hegemony. And still humanity did nothing but talk. Carvax watched the news feeds from his throne and laughed until his sides hurt. "This is the species that confused the elder races," he said to his court. "This is what they were worried about. Pathetic creatures who cannot even defend their own children." But strange things began happening in Velthury space. Intelligence agents who had served the hegemony for decades suddenly vanished without a trace. Military commanders died in accidents that seemed too convenient to be coincidence. Weapons shipments disappeared between ports. Economic systems crashed for reasons no one could explain. Vesok brought these reports to Carvax with growing concern. "High Lord, we have lost 47 key operatives in the last month alone," he said. "Our supply lines are being disrupted. Our communications are becoming unreliable." Carvax waved a clawed hand in dismissal. "Coincidence and incompetence," he declared. "The humans are too weak to strike at us in the shadows. They cannot even strike at us in the open. Press the campaign harder. Show them what true predators can do." Far across the galaxy, Admiral Chun Wei sat in his hidden command center and reviewed the same reports. "Phase 2 is complete," Lieutenant Park told him. "We have eliminated or compromised 90% of their intelligence network. Their military leadership is in chaos. Their economy is beginning to fracture." Chun Wei nodded, but did not smile. "And the civilian casualties?" he asked quietly. Park checked their data before answering. "Minimal, sir. We've been very careful to target only military and government assets." "Good," the Admiral said. "We are not monsters. We do not make war on innocent people." He turned to look at a star map showing Velthury space. Red dots marked the locations of human operatives working in the shadows. Blue dots marked the hidden positions of human warships waiting in deep space. "But I fear our restraint is about to end," he said. The report came in 3 days later. The Velthury had launched their largest attack yet. A full battle fleet had entered the new Helsinki system, a human colony world with a population of 2.3 million. They were not there to raid or enslave. They were there to exterminate. Admiral Chun Wei read the report twice before setting it down. His hands did not shake. His voice did not waver. He had known this day would come. He had prepared for it his entire life. "Contact Ambassador Vasquez," he said. "Tell her it is time." "Sir," Park asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Are we really going to do this?" Chun Wei stood and walked to a locked cabinet at the far end of the room. He pressed his hand against the scanner, and the door slid open to reveal a single folder, marked with a word that had not been spoken aloud in 2 centuries. "Carthago." He opened it and began to read. "In ancient times on Earth," he said quietly, "there was a city called Carthage. It was a great power that challenged the Roman Empire. The Romans defeated them once and showed mercy. They defeated them again and showed mercy again. But the third time," he paused and closed the folder. "The third time the Romans destroyed Carthage utterly. They killed every man and woman and child. They burned the city to ash. They salted the earth so nothing would ever grow there again. Total annihilation." Park felt cold fear spreading through her chest. "And the Velthury have just attacked us for the 3rd time," she said. Chun Wei nodded slowly. "Inform the assembly," he said, his voice hard as steel. "The Prometheus protocols are now active. Humanity will no longer be wearing the mask of mercy." In orbit above New Helsinki, the Velthury fleet prepared to begin their bombardment. They did not know that their communications had already been cut. They did not know that their allies had already abandoned them. They did not know that 12,000 human warships were moving into position across their entire empire. They did not know that they had just made the worst mistake in the history of their species. The wolves were finally coming out. The Galactic Assembly had never been so quiet. Representatives from every major species in the Concord sat in their seats and stared at the small human woman standing at the central podium. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had called an emergency session, something humanity had never done in 2 centuries of membership. She looked different somehow. The patient smile was gone from her face. Her eyes were cold and hard like stones at the bottom of a frozen river. When she spoke, her voice carried across the great hall without any need for amplification. For 200 years, she began, humanity has been part of this concord. For 200 years, we have smiled and helped and accepted every insult you threw at us. You called us weak. You called us cowards. You called us the doormats of the galaxy. She paused and looked around the hall at the assembled aliens. You were wrong. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. The Kreth diplomat shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The Velthari ambassador, who had been summoned for the emergency session, looked bored and contemptuous. Vasquez continued speaking. When we first reached the stars, we made a choice. We looked back at our history, at the wars and genocides and cruelties we had inflicted upon ourselves, and we decided to be better. We decided that we would show the galaxy the best of what humanity could be, not the worst. She pressed a control on the podium and holographic displays flickered to life above the assembly. But we never forgot what we were capable of. The displays showed data that made even the elder races gasp in shock. Maps revealed human intelligence networks embedded in every major government across the galaxy. Agents who had been in place for decades, gathering information and building connections. Every secret, every weakness, every vulnerability had been cataloged and stored. Your communications, Vasquez said calmly. We have been reading them for 170 years, your military deployments. We know them better than your own commanders, your economic systems. We have access to every financial network in the Concord. The Solari representative rose from her seat, her crystalline body trembling with what might have been fear or anger. This is impossible, she said. We would have detected such intrusions, Vasquez smiled. But there was no warmth in it. You detected exactly what we wanted you to detect, she replied. You saw a kind and helpful species that posed no threat. You never thought to look deeper. She changed the display to show military assets, and the assembly fell into stunned silence. 12,000 capital ships. Warships larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. 40,000 support vessels, supply ships and carriers and troop transports. 2 million Marines trained in combat techniques that combine the deadliest methods from human history. We built this fleet in secret, Vasquez explained, hidden in deep space facilities that appear on no charts. We developed weapons your scientists cannot imagine. We trained soldiers who would make your warriors weep with fear. The Velthari ambassador finally lost his look of contempt. His scales had gone pale, and his clawed hands gripped the arms of his chair. This is a bluff, he said, but his voice shook. Humans are not capable of this. Vasquez turned to look directly at him. Your fleet is currently in orbit above New Helsinki, she said. 2.3 million of my people live on that world. Men and women and children who have done nothing wrong except be born human. She pressed another control, and the display changed to show tactical data. Allow me to show you what is happening right now. The assembly watched as red dots representing Velthari ships appeared above the colony world. They also watched as blue dots representing human ships appeared all around them. Not just at New Helsinki, but across the entire Velthari hegemony. Thousands of warships materializing from nowhere. Your fleet at New Helsinki is surrounded, Vasquez said. Your home fleet is surrounded. Every military installation in your empire has human ships within weapons range. You are completely and utterly trapped. The Velthari ambassador stood up so fast his chair fell backward. This is an act of war. He screamed, No, Vasquez replied, her voice as cold as space itself. This is a response to an act of war. You attacked our colonies. You enslaved our people. You murdered our children. We asked you to stop. We begged the Concorde to intervene. No one listened. She looked around at the other representatives, many of whom could not meet her eyes. "You wanted to see what humans truly are," she said softly. "You wanted to know what we were hiding behind our smiles and our kindness. Very well." She straightened her spine and spoke, with a voice that would be remembered for generations. "We are the species that nearly destroyed itself before reaching the stars. We invented nuclear weapons and used them on our own cities. We created biological warfare and chemical weapons and machines designed for nothing but killing. We fought wars that killed hundreds of millions of our own people." Her eyes swept across the assembly, and then we looked at what we had become. And we were horrified. We chose to be better. We chose to be kind. We chose to help instead of conquer. But make no mistake, the monsters are still inside us. We simply keep them chained. She turned back to the Velthary ambassador. "You have broken those chains. You have forced us to become what we swore we would never be again. And now you will face the consequences." The ambassador tried to speak, but no words came out. "You have 1 hour to order your fleet to stand down and surrender," Vasquez said. "If you do not, we will destroy every military asset in your empire. Not in months, not in weeks, in days. And when we are done, your civilization will exist only because we allow it to." She stepped away from the podium. "The mask of mercy is gone. You are looking at humanity's true face now." She walked out of the assembly hall without looking back in the silence that followed. The Kreth diplomat turned to the Solari representative with terror in his yellow eyes. "What have we done?" he whispered. The Solari had no answer. No one did. High Lord Carvax refused to surrender. He sat upon his throne of black metal and bone and laughed at the human ultimatum. His pride would not allow him to bow before a species he had called prey animals. He ordered his fleets to attack and his warriors to fight to the death. He believed the humans were bluffing. He was wrong. What followed would later be called the Six-Day Apocalypse, the fastest and most complete military victory in galactic history. A demonstration of power so overwhelming that it changed the political landscape of the galaxy forever. Day 1 began at midnight Galactic Standard Time. Human cyber warfare specialists launched simultaneous attacks on every Velthary communication network. Military frequencies went silent. Civilian broadcasts turned to static. The entire hegemony was suddenly deaf and blind. Commanders could not contact their fleets. Admirals could not coordinate their forces. The Velthary war machine had been built for hunting and killing, but it had never faced an enemy that could simply turn off its eyes and ears across the hegemony. Velthary officers screamed into dead communicators while human ships moved into position around them. Day 2 brought the surgical strikes human intelligence had spent 2 centuries identifying. Every military leader in the Velthary command structure. They knew where these officers lived, where they worked, where they slept, and at precisely 0600 Galactic Standard Time, 94% of them died. Some were killed by missiles that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Others were eliminated by operatives who had been living among the Velthary for years. A few simply failed to wake up as poison did its quiet work in the span of 6 hours. The Velthary military lost almost every experienced commander it had. The survivors were junior officers who had never led anything larger than a patrol ship. They were now in charge of defending an empire against the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Day 3 was the Battle of Karth's Vale. The Velthary had managed to gather their home fleet in the nebula known as Karth's Vale. It was the largest armada in their history. 800 warships crewed by their best remaining warriors. They believed the nebula would give them cover, and that their numbers would be enough to at least hurt the human invaders. They were wrong about both. Admiral Chen Wei commanded the human 7th Fleet personally. 200 ships against 800. The odds seemed to favor the Velthary. But odds mean nothing when one side has been planning for this moment for 2 centuries. The battle lasted 4 hours. Human ships moved with coordination the Valkyrie could not match. Every maneuver had been practiced 1,000 times in simulation. Every weapon system had been designed specifically to counter Valkyrie technology. The humans knew exactly where to hit and exactly when to hit it. When the firing stopped, 11 human ships had been destroyed. The Valkyrie had lost everything. All 800 vessels were either destroyed or captured. Not a single ship escaped to warn the rest of the hegemony. Day 4 saw the landings begin. 2 million human marines dropped onto Valkyrie military installations across 40 star systems. They moved with speed and precision that the defenders could not comprehend. Bases that had stood for thousands of years fell in minutes. Weapons that had never been defeated were destroyed before they could fire. The Valkyrie warriors fought with all the ferocity their predator heritage demanded. But courage alone cannot defeat an enemy that knows your every weakness and has a counter for your every strength. By the end of Day 4, humanity controlled every major military facility, and the Day 5 brought collapse. The Valkyrie civilian population had watched their empire crumble in less than a week. They had been told that humans were weak and cowardly, that the hegemony would crush them easily. Now they watched their fleets burn and their armies surrender. Riots broke out on a dozen worlds. Citizens who had cheered for war now demanded peace at any cost. The government that had seemed so powerful days before lost all authority. Provincial governors declared independence. Military units refused to follow orders. The hegemony tore itself apart from within. High Lord Karvak sat alone on his throne as his empire collapsed around him. His advisors had fled. His guards had abandoned their posts. The great hall that had once been filled with the sounds of conquest and glory was silent and empty. Day 6 was the end. A single human shuttle landed at the Valkyrie capital. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked out alone and unarmed. She crossed the empty plaza where Karvax had once held parades celebrating his victories. She climbed the steps of his palace and entered the throne room. The High Lord sat where he had always sat, too proud to run even when everything was lost. "You have defeated us," he said, his voice hollow and broken. "What do you want?" Vasquez looked at the alien who had caused so much suffering, who had ordered the deaths of so many innocent people. And she felt something she had not expected: pity. "We want peace," she said. Simply. Karvax laughed, a bitter sound without any humor. "You could take everything," he said. "Our worlds, our resources, our people as slaves. You have the power. Why would you settle for peace?" Vasquez walked closer until she stood directly in front of the throne. "Because we know what happens when power is used without mercy," she replied. "We have seen it in our own history. Conquest leads to oppression. Oppression leads to rebellion. Rebellion leads to more war. It is a cycle that never ends." She held out a document. "The surrender agreement. We do not want your empire," she said. "We want you to stop attacking us. We want you to free the slaves you have taken. We want you to pay for the damage you have caused. And then we want to help you become something better than what you are." Karvax stared at her for a long moment. "You would show us mercy?" he asked. "After everything we have done?" "Yes," Vasquez said. "Because that is who we choose to be." The High Lord took the document and signed it. The 6-day apocalypse was over across the galaxy. The other species watched in shocked silence. They had seen humanity reveal its true power. They had watched the Valkyrie hegemony fall like a house of cards in a hurricane. And now they wondered what humanity would do with its victory. 1 year had passed since the 6-day apocalypse. The galaxy had spent those 12 months waiting for humanity to claim its conquest. Every species in the Concord expected the humans to become the new tyrants, to build an empire on the ashes of the Valkyrie hegemony, to make slaves of the people they had defeated. It was what any other species would have done. It was what the Velthari themselves had done countless times throughout their history. But humanity did something no one expected. They helped rebuild. What they had destroyed, human engineers worked alongside Velthari workers to repair damaged cities. Human doctors treated wounded civilians, regardless of what species they were. Human ships carried food and medicine to worlds that had been cut off during the war. The prisoners of war were treated with dignity. They were given clean quarters and proper food. They were allowed to contact their families. When the peace treaty was finalized, they were all released without condition. High Lord Carvax had expected to be executed. Instead, he was exiled to a small moon where he spent his days writing his memoirs, trying to understand how he had so completely misunderstood the species that had defeated him. The Galactic Assembly called a special summit 1 year after the war ended. Every major species sent their highest representatives. Even the Velthari sent a delegation. Though they sat quietly in the back and spoke to no one, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the central podium once again. But this time, she looked tired. There were new lines on her face and gray streaks in her dark hair that had not been there before. "I know why you have called this summit," she said. "You want to know what humanity intends to do with the power we have revealed. You want to know if we plan to conquer you the way we conquered the Velthari." The assembly was silent. "Waiting, the answer is no," Vasquez said. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. The Kreth diplomat stood up. "Why not?" he demanded. "You have proven that you could defeat any of us. You have the largest fleet in the galaxy. You have intelligence networks in all of our governments. Why would you choose not to take what you have earned?" Vasquez smiled. And for a moment she looked like the patient diplomat she had been for 30 years. "Because we remember who we were before we found the stars." She pressed a control, and the holographic displays came to life, showing images from human history, wars that had killed millions, weapons that had devastated cities, suffering on a scale that made even the predator species uncomfortable to watch. "We did all of this to ourselves," Vasquez said quietly. "We fought wars over religion and territory and resources and ideas. We invented weapons capable of destroying our entire species, and we came close to using them. We treated our own people with cruelty that would make the Velthari seem gentle by comparison." She paused to let the images sink in, and then we stopped. She continued, "We looked at what we had become, and we were horrified. We decided that we had to be better, not because we were naturally good, but because we knew how naturally terrible we could be." The displays changed to show human humanitarian missions. Doctors saving lives, engineers building homes, teachers educating children. "The mask of mercy was never a deception," Vasquez said. "It was an aspiration, a goal we set for ourselves, a choice we make every single day despite what our history tells us we are capable of. We wanted to be the species that helps rather than conquers, that builds rather than destroys." She looked around at the assembled representatives. "We hoped we would never have to reveal the wolves beneath the wool. We hoped that kindness and patience would be enough. But the Velthari would not let us maintain that hope. They forced us to become what we had sworn we would never be again." Her voice grew heavy with emotion. "Do you know what it cost us to unleash that war? Not in ships or soldiers, but in our souls. We killed thousands of Velthari warriors. We destroyed families and dreams and futures. Yes, they were attacking us. Yes, we had no choice. But that does not make the weight any lighter." She straightened her spine and spoke clearly. "We will not become tyrants. We will not build an empire. We will return to being the helpful and kind species we were before. Because that is who we choose to be." The Solari representative rose from her seat, her crystalline body catching the light like a living prism. "How can we trust you?" she asked. "How do we know you will not change your mind?" Vasquez nodded as if she had expected this question. "You cannot know for certain," she admitted. Trust is earned through actions, not promises. Watch what we do in the years to come. Watch how we treat the Vulturi. Watch how we interact with the rest of the galaxy. Judge us by our deeds. She stepped away from the podium. But I will tell you this. Humanity understands something that most species do not. True strength is not the ability to destroy. It is the ability to choose not to. Every day that we choose mercy over conquest, kindness over cruelty, cooperation over domination, we prove that we are stronger than our darkest impulses. She paused at the exit of the assembly hall. You asked what humans truly are. The answer is that we are both the wolves and the shepherds. We have the capacity for terrible violence and the capacity for great compassion. Which one we show the galaxy is a choice we make consciously and deliberately. Her final words echoed through the silent hall. Be grateful that we choose to be shepherds. And be wise enough not to give us a reason to change that choice. She left the assembly hall for the last time. The vote was held the next day. Unanimously, the Galactic Concord offered humanity a permanent seat on the High Council. Not because they feared human power, though they certainly did, but because they finally understood something important. Humanity was not hiding their nature behind a mask of mercy. They were actively fighting their nature every single day, choosing to be good, despite knowing exactly how easy it would be to be terrible. 3 months later, Admiral Shen Wei visited a memorial that had been built for the victims of New Helsinki. 2,300 names were carved into walls of white stone, each one representing a life that had been lost before the war began. A child from one of the colony families approached him, a little girl with blonde hair and curious eyes. My mother says you are the man who won the war, she said. Chen Wei knelt down so he could look at her face to face. I commanded the fleet, he said gently. But many people won the war. The girl tilted her head. Are we the good guys or the bad guys? She asked. The old admiral was quiet for a long moment, thinking about all the death and destruction that had been necessary to protect this child and millions like her. We are trying very hard to be the good guys, he finally said. Every single day, we are trying. The child seemed satisfied with this answer and ran back to her mother. Chen Wei stood and looked at the names on the memorial wall. Each one a reminder of what humanity had lost. Each one a reminder of why they had fought, and each one a reminder of the choice they made every day to be better than what they were, to be better than what they could be, to wear the mask of mercy not as a disguise, but as a goal worth striving for. The galaxy had finally learned what humanity truly was, and humanity had learned something too, that the hardest battle is not against enemies who wish to destroy you. It is against the darkness within yourself that whispers how easy it would be to become the monster. Humanity had won both battles, and they would keep fighting them day after day, for as long as the stars continued to shine.